With the football fantasy season officially kicking off last night with my beloved Eagles beating the despised Dallas Cowboys, who, well, not my faves, aren't worth spitting on. That means it's time for our Mad Money Fantasy Stock Football Draft. We do this exercise every year because, look, I just think it's a great way to educate you. Building a great portfolio has a lot in common with building a great fantasy football team. Plus, we have a terrific track record with these picks. Now, the 11 stocks I recommend as part of last year's draft are now up roughly 55% on average, absolutely trouncing the S&P 500. But enough looking backwards. Let's get to this year's picks, starting with the all-important quarterback position. Now, from a fantasy football perspective, what you want from the quarterback is steady production. In most fantasy leagues, there's only one active quarterback on the roster. So they need to have a solid performance week in and week out. And that's why I've long said that Apple, the original own it, don't trade it stock, is like the quarterback of your portfolio. Now, Apple ended up being one of our worst performers in our fantasy football stock basket over the past year, with a measly mid-single-digit gain, barely trailing the S&P 500. But you know what? I'm not going to be easily shaking off Apple. It doesn't bother me. The stock's in fantastic shape. Again, you know, it's up over 41% from its April lows. The company seems to be back in the good graces of the Trump administration. The judiciary hasn't blocked them from taking billions of dollars to make Google their default search engine, and Apple's sales are growing again. That's why it remains a huge position for our charitable trust. As long as they can keep doing pay to play with, where you don't have to worry about the company's AI strategy, well, they'll just do what they did with search and make a fortune in the process. Maybe it's more than $20 billion a year from Google. So who's the NFL equivalent of Apple this year? I've got an outside-the-box pick this time. Yes, I was drafting from my own league, Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow. He fits the bill with the potential to fully realize his what I think could be an MVP conversation. Let's say conversation, there's a lot of good quarterbacks. Now, Burrow finished last season with nearly 5,000 yards and 43 passing touchdowns, leading the league, in both categories. But I think the analogy fits because Burrow had so much noise to his story last year. Top target, Jamar Chase, more on him in a second, missed training camp last year. Team started the season very slowly. Bengals defense stunk all year. And so the team was scrambling to try to make the playoffs, ultimately falling short. In other words, the Bengals had a lost year, just like Apple did. But in the offseason, the Bengals reached contract extension with both Chase and their other top receiver, T. Higgins. Teams playing more of their starters this preseason, avoid another slow start. And it finally feels like everything's coming together for Burrow to have both another strong season. That's why I think Joe Burrow is Apple this year. I'm expecting big things from both of them. Although when I met Burrow last year at the Super Bowl, I got to tell you, it would have killed the guy to smile periodically. Jeez. Now, next, let's talk running backs, which are the workhorses of your fantasy team. You want steady production from your backs, including lots of touchdowns, no matter what defense you're playing or what the weather's like. But I've said before, this position is inherently kind of boom and bust. Running backs get hurt all the time, and the best running back often changes from year to year. But the running back position has also changed in recent years, as pass-catching running backs are now the top options for fantasy teams. That's sort of like what we're looking for in our stock picks, for pass-catching abilities, like a secular growth theme for a secular company. And that helps it keep staying if, like, say, the Fed doesn't cut rates fast enough. So what are the analogs here? Well, last year I included GE Aerospace, and that turned out to be a great pick. Thank you, Larry Culp, up 70%. The commercial aerospace boom remains one of the market's fantastic secular growth stories. So we're going to stick with the pick. But what's the NFL equivalent of GE Aerospace this year? As we're spending as much time on the players because it's just like, what can I say? It's our season. Let's keep things going. Keep it simple. The league's best running back is Philadelphia Eagles' own Saquon Barkley, who finished last year with over 2,000 yards rushing, tops in the league, added plenty of catches. It was better last night running than catching. What's the analog here? Well, come on, it's an aerospace company, and Barkley can fly. How about some other running backs? Remember, we're looking for industrials that have exposure to secular growth drivers. So what about RTX, which is the old United Technologies aerospace business? It's been merged with the old Raytheon. Aerospace and defense are both working here with Trump's bill, including $1 trillion of defense spending. Maybe we should say war spending. Call it the Department of War instead of the Department of Defense. What's the NFL's analog for RTX? Let's go with Detroit Lions running back Jahmyr Gibbs, who is so good. He finished the season as the top fantasy running back last year. Why? He may have trailed Barkley by nearly 600 yards rushing, but he finished as the top running back because he also added 500 yards receiving and 4 touchdown catches. And that's why the comparison works. RTX has 2 growth themes. Gibbs can hurt opposing defenses in 2 different ways. Finally, Unless you've been living under a rock, you know that we got this gigantic bull market electricity production to keep all these AI data centers running, and that's why we're looking at GE Vernova, the power business of the old General Electric. Makes huge turbines for power plants. They pronounce it turbines, so I do too. Best performing industrial in the S&P over the past year by a wide margin. This charitable trust name has been walloped of late ever since the president came out hard against wind subsidies, as Vernova has a wind division. But it's chiefly a natural gas play for what you that's why you own it for. Maybe it'll bottom as people realize that's let's say the salient division. And if you want power, the NFL comparison is obvious. We're talking about Baltimore Ravens running back Derrick Henry, who quietly finished not far behind Barkley last year, over 1,900 yards rushing. The risk with GE Aerospace is that you're too late, right? I mean, the risk to Henry is that time will catch up with the 31-year-old running back. But I think both are worth the risk. I really like the Ravens here this year, too. Finally, how about the wide receiver position? As I tell you every year, wide receivers are all about growth. When they hit big, they really hit big. And you can make your whole week in fantasy that's why you have to go for a stud wide receiver at the top, no matter if you don't want to. Good growth can make your year as part of your portfolio. NVIDIA, therefore, has been the stalwart, even though it's down 5 of the last 6 days. Oh, boy, I guess it's times have passed for NVIDIA. But you know what? I don't care. I say ain't broke, don't fix. Who's the NFL equivalent for one of the greatest stocks in history? I can only mention the aforementioned Jamar Chase as the NVIDIA of your fantasy team. He cemented himself as the best receiver in the league last year, which is why he's now the highest paid non-quarterback in league history. So Chase is now expensive, just as NVIDIA seems expensive at any given time. But when you look back, I bet they'll both be worth the price, meaning that the price-earnings multiple turns out to be not that high as the earnings continue to ramp. Next up, I like Alphabet, one of the best long-term growth stocks that you could have owned over the past 2 decades. The comp here is Justin Jefferson. He's the Vikings receiver that finished as the second-best fantasy play at the position last year. I will not do a dance that you just have to take my word that I like him. I think of both Alphabet and Jefferson as known commodities with major new questions. For Alphabet, Google's the worry is how's the advent of AI going to impact the core search business? So far, so good, though. For Jefferson, the concern of how he'll do paired with second-year quarterback J.J. McCarthy, who missed the entirety of his rookie year with a knee injury. Both concerns are legitimate, but probably overblown. I think they'll both be just fine. Here's the bottom line. Now that you've got your quarterbacks and your running backs and your wide receivers, stick around after the break for the rest of your fantasy stock football picks. Mad Money is back after the break.
Coming up, lock in those picks. From special teams to tight ends, Cramer's rounding out the roster for his fantasy stock draft. Next. Don't miss a second of Mad Money. Follow @Jim Cramer on X. Have a question? Tweet Cramer. #MadMentions. Send Jim an email to madmoney@cnbc.com or give us a call at 1-800-743-CNBC. Miss something? Head to madmoney.cnbc.com.